If you're gearing up for a 5K, 10K, or even a marathon, it's a good idea to be fueled with all the information you can. This is part 2 of 2 in our series with physical therapist Chad Boehm on running. In the first episode, we talked about a beginner's guide to running. This episode is for people who already run and would like to increase their mileage or intensity. Welcome to Your Health, a podcast from Jefferson Healthcare. I'm your host, Maggie McKay. So good to have you here again, Chad. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with increasing training intensity and miles. What should we do to do that safely?
So if somebody is coming to me wanting to increase their mileage or their intensity, there's a couple of rules we follow. One of which is the 10% rule that says you really shouldn't increase your mileage or increase your time week over week more than about 10%. So, just to make the math easy, if somebody's running 10 miles one week, they don't want to increase it more by more than 1 mile the next week. And when it comes to the balance between intensity and volume, usually what we recommend is increasing your volume first, then increasing your intensity kind of as the race gets closer. And so you might spend about like 80% of your time gradually increasing your volume, your mileage of your time week over week until you hit kind of like a peak mileage. And then once you kind of hit that peak mileage, then you start slowly increasing the proportion of higher intensity running you're doing. You might introduce like one hard workout in a week. If you're pretty fit, you might do 2. If you're really fit, you might do 3. Those are the 2 kind of rules of thumb we tend to follow.
Also, a lot of athletes are getting ready for the Jefferson Healthcare Roadie Run, our community's biggest road race and a beloved community tradition. So many people participate in it. How can someone transition from complete to compete in regards to racing?
I think one of the biggest things when going from complete to compete is kind of like having a plan, essentially. I mean, for most people, if you're just taking up running as a recreational activity, just something you do to kind of like blow off steam or just kind of stay in shape, you can kind of just go out, do 2, 3, 4 miles, day after day. You don't have to like think too much about it. When we start competing, when we start thinking about like higher intensity and wanting to improve our fitness, then we need to start taking a bit more of a gauged approach, or we have to have some kind of a plan. And usually, what I tell people is, either get online, find a plan from Hal Higdon or Andy Burfoot or Greg McMillan or Jack Daniels. They all have like really great kind of introductory plans or novice plans, or even better yet, like buy a book. Some people, or a lot of running books will have plans in the back, and they give a really good like oversight into like why you do certain types of runs and when to pepper them through your training schedule. But that's kind of the overarching thing is like have a plan. And in that plan, you are going to want to do more kind of higher intensity running. And that's where having like a week to week, like I'm going to do one really hard run, or maybe I might do 2 hard runs. And I'm going to schedule in some rest too. Some people kind of get in this mindset of like, like if a little is good, more is better. But really when it comes to an athletic endeavor, rest is training as well. So this is like 2 biggest pieces of advice I have for people who want to get into more kind of competing or like pushing themselves or improving their times. Is yes, you want to run harder. Yes, you want to have recovery in there, but at least have something down on paper that you can look at and follow and kind of know I'm on the right track or I kind of fell off my path a little bit. Kind of hold yourself accountable, but also do it in pencil, because it's never going to go 100% right. So you want to have it like in pencil to kind of like change. You can modify where you put your workout, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of the overarching pieces of advice I have for people typically.
You touched on it briefly, but let's talk about how to increase your mileage safely without causing an injury, increasing mileage and increasing intensity. The idea is, like you said, have a book, have a plan, but you don't want to get an injury. So, what else about that?
So, well, like I mentioned, the 10% rule. Actually, there's kind of two schools of thought. One's the 10% rule. The other one is more of a Jack Daniels, Dr. Jack Daniels. He's a running coach. He's been coaching since like the 70s or 80s or something. There's a lot of research into running. He is probably one of the more intellectually, he's one of the higher level, like more accessible coaches. Writes a lot of books and stuff. But one of his rules is however many runs you do in a week, you can add that many miles every third or fourth week. So if I'm running 20 miles, but I'm doing it in 5 runs, I might maintain that volume for about 3 weeks, and then on the 4th week, I could increase that to 25 miles, and I could hold that for 3 or 4 weeks, and then increase. I'm still doing 5 runs. I can increase that by another 5 miles, and so really, when you do the math, it kind of works out to be about equivalent. One is more just kind of like chunked. You spend a certain amount of time here, and then you spend a certain amount of time there, and a certain amount of time there. The other one's more kind of graduated. It's kind of like week after week after week. It's a little bit higher and a little bit higher. But either case, I've had success with progressing athletes in a safe manner. And usually along with that, it's as mileage or time goes up, the ancillary tasks like stretching, foam rolling, get to be more important, or you want to be sure we're doing them kind of consistently to avoid some of that injury risk.
I'm not a runner, but 5 runs a week sounds like a lot to me. How do I know if I'm overtraining?
So with overtraining, the tough part about overtraining is there's no real kind of like diagnosis for it. It's more of a diagnosis by just kind of feel. I would say the most common symptoms, I guess, would be like difficulty sleeping. A lot of times, if people are exercising too much or running too much, that sympathetic nervous system is kind of in overdrive all the time, and so they have things like elevated heart rate, hard time sleeping. They might feel kind of anxious frequently, or they can't like calm down. Their well, I think I touched on the elevated heart rate. And then sometimes people have recurrent upper respiratory tract infections. They have like a cold that basically kind of like never goes away. Those are all kind of signs that you're overdoing it. You're kind of grinding a little too hard. And so, back it off for a week or maybe even 2 weeks, and just until you feel good. That's the other thing is we expect you to feel kind of tired, but we want you to feel good, day after day. Like, I feel tired, but I could do it again tomorrow. And I still feel tired, but I could do it again tomorrow. But when it keeps going, and you just feel worse and worse, just take a break.
I often see runners wearing those knee braces, not a brace, but kind of those elastic sleeves. What's that all about?
That I think a lot of people's hearts are in the right place when, they say something like, "Oh, my knee kind of hurts, so I'm going to get a brace, like as protection or something." The tough part is most over-the-counter braces actually aren't really robust enough to provide actual stability. I mean, if you look at an actual kind of unloading brace provided by like an orthopedic surgeon, I mean, they're big. They have really big metal stays. They're hinged. They go kind of from your hip all the way down to your ankle. That's providing like stability. Most over-the-counter braces, the benefit mostly comes in the fact that they provide some compression, so they can kind of keep some swelling down if there is swelling, and they keep the joint warm, which oftentimes kind of makes it feel a little bit better. But in terms of like injury prevention or providing stability or something, it's the jury's out on that. I wouldn't recommend for injury prevention necessarily, but if it makes you feel good, it's not going to hurt. So,
So let's say it's your first race, maybe a marathon. You're getting ready for it. You're planning. How do you prepare for a race? If it's like your first one and you've never done it, you don't know what to expect.
usually, if I'm like personally, if I'm going to prepare for a race, or if I have an athlete who's going to prepare for a race, um, the if available, which like for the roadie run, the great thing is like the course is like just right in town. So if you can, try to mimic the course as much as possible. Um, and so like for our race, there's I think it's mile 2 to 3, something like that, is basically all uphill. It's a huge climb up Discovery and Hastings, and it's not particularly fun. And so, if you can incorporate certain sections of the course like into your running, so you know kind of what to expect. Practice strategies like your fluid intake, your food intake. Practice those while on your training run, so that the day of you don't have any kind of gastric distress because of it. And for something like a longer race, like a marathon, it's kind of unreasonable to say like, oh yeah, go practice the course because it's 26 miles. But you can do sections. Go on the race website, find the elevation profile, see like, okay, mile 15 to 16 is pretty hilly, or mile 18 to 19 is downhill. So find places around where you live to practice hills, to practice downhill, as uphill, all that kind of stuff. And so basically kind of taking bits of what you plan to do on race day and just practicing it so you know kind of what to expect or know how to pace yourself or that type of stuff. That's going to get you kind of mostly mentally prepared and physically prepared. So
Yeah, I would say, people who've been running for a while and then they want to try running a race, definitely prepare for it, right? Don't just willy-nilly jump into it and think, okay, it's fine.
right, it's definitely not and especially if you're really like pushing yourself, want to get a new PR, or on the far end of the spectrum, qualify for Boston or something. It definitely takes. It's not a non-trivial event, right? It takes dedication. Yeah, it takes dedication, takes sacrifice. You really got to be, especially as a new parent. I've had to be very set aside certain pieces of time and be very like I have to guard that time to say like this is my running time. Like I have to go for a run. Doesn't matter if it's windy, if it's rainy, whatever. I got to do it. If I want to get better, I got to do it. And so yeah, it's.
It's a lot different to prepare for a race rather than just your routine running, sounds like. What else should we know to prepare for a race? Anything else in closing?
I think we touched on most things I would recommend. Just practicing what you plan to do. Use the same shoes you're going to use, lace in the same way, eat the same breakfast. Nothing basically like nothing new on race day.
What about water?
Just like during the race, or
Yeah, like you don't want to be carrying a heavy thing, but you need to be hydrated. Should you just rely on the people giving it to you from the side?
oh, I see. So yes, and even that in and of itself is a little bit of skill. Drinking from a paper cup while running is surprisingly difficult. Like if you get half of it in your mouth, you're doing well. And so I have personally, I've done a few races where I actually like because they sell like straps you can put on your water bottle to like so it straps to your hand, and so you run with that. And a couple times I have tried that, and it does make the experience of drinking more desirable. It's like you can drink more often, kind of when you want. Luckily, most races around here have adequate aid stations that if you could rely on that. And really, I make a joke about like drinking from it while running is tough. Theoretically, you could just stop and drink too. I mean, you're only going to lose like 15 seconds or something. It's not going to take very long at all. But yeah, you do see a lot of people like Camelbacks and stuff.
What about those little gel packs?
Oh, the gel packs are great. I really like them. And that's one of those things to where you definitely want to practice with them, primarily because the sugar content, the calorie content is really dense. And so usually what we say is, or what I recommend anyways, if you take a gel, like take it with water. So you might have, like personally, I will save a gel. If I know a aid station is coming up, take the gel, so that when I get there, I can take my water, switch it around, get it down, and then the water kind of dilutes the the sugars and the proteins and everything in the gel, so it's easier to digest. It's like when it's really dense, it's hard to absorb, and so you want to dilute it a little bit to actually get into the body. And so, definitely kind of like pacing it or timing it, but they're excellent supplements to keep you going during a race.
Thank you so much for this useful information. I'm sure it's going to help a lot of runners.
Oh yeah, no problem. I'm always happy to share.
Again, that's Chad Boehm. Get more tips at jeffersonhealthcare.org. And if you found this podcast helpful, please share it on your social channels and check out our entire podcast library for topics of interest to you. I'm Maggie McKay. Thanks for listening to Your Health, presented by Jefferson Healthcare.